All right, Heather Wilson Schiltz, you are on Driven to Ride. Thank you for being here.
Thank you so much for having me.
Yeah, man, I'm excited to talk to you. You've got a lot going on. You're a fellow Midwesterner, which I have a slight bias towards. So, it's great to have you here. Let's start right at the beginning, though. Right now, in your own words, what do people maybe most know you for? What would you say is your claim to fame?
Yeah, I mean, I think like personally, professionally, it's probably dogs and motorcycles. Like that's what I'm known for. We have two golden retrievers and they go absolutely everywhere with us and people see pictures
Nice.
of them all the time. So the dogs are a big aspect of my life and obviously motorcycling both personally and professionally.
Nice. And I mean, there's kind of a spoiler alert in the back a little bit, but you've got your own company, High Gear Success, that you're running as well. You've got you're a fellow podcaster as well. So, I mean, you're just hitting home runs already from the start. So, thank you.
Well, I appreciate that.
Yeah. So, talking about motorcycles, we can talk about dogs if you want to as well. I love golden retrievers; they're great dogs. I don't have any dogs. I'm a cat person at the moment, but
I won't hold that against you.
thank you. Yeah, yeah. My wife used to work in an animal hospital, and so she brought one cat home, and I grew up
Mm,
with cats and dogs, and then one cat became two, then three, and now
I
we
was gonna
have
say you're
four.
lucky you don't have 100. So
Yeah, yeah, we've got four. She keeps threatening five, but we'll stick with four for now. So, but anyway, back to motorcycling. How did you get started in motorcycling?
yeah, I mean, I was really born into it. And when I say that, I literally was born into it. So my parents owned a motorcycle dealership, um,
Nice.
predating when I was around. And my dad was also a very avid off road racer. And so our lives kind of revolved around going to the races as a family and being in the dealership. And that's just kind of how I found my start in motorcycling.
So you didn't really have a choice.
No, not really, but I loved it, and, my parents actually just sold the dealership a few months ago, but they had 48 years,
Wow.
of owning the dealership that my dad started right after high school. It was KTM and Husqvarna off-road motorcycles, so it
Wow.
was a good long run, and we're still all getting used to the fact that the dealership isn't there anymore.
Sure. Yeah. Well, starting right after high school, I mean, that's a big leap. So
Yeah.
I
Yeah, I think for him, he was racing and it made sense that he could kind of have a little bit of control over that career and that hobby. And then it just kind of I don't think he expected it to be a lifelong thing, but that's what it turned into.
Yeah, no, I mean, usually there's a dealership that if they're doing well and have the business plan in place, they usually have a rider or two that they sponsor. So if you're a racer, why not just have your own dealership to sponsor yourself? That's big brain. So,
Yeah. Yeah.
um, I guess that's kind of where you get your entrepreneurial spirit then too from. It must be hereditary too.
Yeah, I didn't originally start out having any plans to start my own business or be an entrepreneur. In fact, growing up, all I ever wanted to be was a teacher when
Okay.
I grew up. So I spent my childhood playing school. My poor brother was always my student. But yeah, I mean, I even when I was in high school, I student taught in classrooms in middle school, and I was going to go to college to be a teacher, and I loved that aspect of it. And it actually was like kind of a funny backstory because I was also involved in 4-H, which is like a youth
Okay.
development program.
Hmm.
Growing up, I showed dogs and rabbits and lots of other different things. Um, but I was eventually fair queen and went on to become the Ohio Fairs queen, which is like the state level
Wow.
queen. And I was
Impressive.
touring around to all these different fairs and basically like an ambassador and like a PR representative for the industry.
Sure.
And that kind of transitioned into my love of journalism. So while I was doing that, I was like, oh, this is kind of interesting. My teachers were telling me, hey, you're a really good writer. I didn't really think anything of it. And so I kind of started exploring that path and ended up kind of taking a left turn into journalism right before I applied to college. And
Nice.
I still get to tie in that love of teaching, though, with teaching motorcycle safety classes. So while I'm not in a traditional classroom, I still get that environment where I can share my passion and be able to teach people things.
Yeah, nice. And we'll talk about motorcycle safety a little bit because I want to ask you about that. But um, I guess I'm interested in the answer to your answer to this question, in because you've literally been born into it. Like, were you hooked from the start, like with motorcycles, or was it like just something your family did and you like didn't even think about it, or like Did you have to grow into it? Like how did you kind of start actually riding? Do you remember?
Yeah, I don't think it was, like, really, like, a conscious decision. Like, I loved it. Like, we enjoyed it as a family. We were always camping and going to races and riding dirt bikes. I started riding when I was 5, so that was just something that we did. Um, but more than, like, my love of riding, like, I enjoy riding so much. It's really freeing. It's a great experience, but, like, I love the community and the family aspect that surrounds it. Like, when I think about motorcycling, that's what comes to mind for me is, like, the relationships that I've built in it more so than,
Yeah.
like, riding my motorcycle. So, I think that's a really awesome aspect of this industry is, like, it's great to be able to ride a motorcycle, but there's so much more that comes with it as well.
Yeah, yeah, I have to imagine. Yeah, going to races, you're probably seeing some of the same people, or like going to, off-road tracks and stuff. You probably kind of have a second or an extended family, as it were, with
Yeah,
the people
that's
that you ride with.
absolutely true. Yeah.
Yeah. Did you, and you ride both dirt and street now, right?
Mhm. Yeah,
Does
so grew up riding dirt bikes as a kid, and then I guess it was just kind of like a natural transition when I was 15 and a half, like, to get my street bike license. So, I took the motorcycle safety course here in Ohio. It's actually kind of funny, I get to now teach with the people who were my instructors many, many
no
years
way.
ago. They're still teaching classes. So got my license and, yeah, did a little bit of riding on the street and dirt, and now I get to kind of enjoy both.
Yeah. Does the rest of your family ride on the street, or are they strictly dirt?
So dad was definitely just a dirt guy. He really didn't
Mhm.
love the idea of me riding on the street. And now that he's retired, he's got a 701 Husky and he's getting kind of used to the street and adventure riding game because that's something
Yeah.
that I've been really into the last couple years. So he's kind of transitioning into that. And my mom rode street bikes and dirt bikes with us when we were younger. She hasn't ridden for a lot of years, but
Mhm.
I guess even thinking back further than that, like my grandparents both rode dirt bikes and street bikes as well, both my grandma and my
Wow.
grandpa. So it's definitely a family thing.
Yeah, it's hereditary, man, for sure. That's that's super cool that your grandparents rode both of them too. Because
Yeah,
I mean, going back in the day, probably weren't. I mean, there's a lot of female riders now, but there probably were a percent of a percent of female riders back 2 generations ago.
yeah. And my grandma was racing enduros, which I don't have any desire to do because that's way too hard and scary for me. But like to think about exactly like you said, like back then, not only to be a woman rider, but to be like competing in these off road events, I think was super cool.
Yeah, and like, I mean, can you imagine like the suspension and the like lack of technology compared to now racing those things? That had to have been
Yeah.
insane.
And my grandpa is 84 now and still rips on a street. Like,
That's super
if
cool.
we go riding with him, like, it's a struggle for me to keep up with him. Like,
That's so cool.
it's so fun.
Well, and I have to say too, you are officially now the youngest, or the youngest person to get their motorcycle license that I know. Because I was always the young guy at 17. My parents had to sign the permission slip for me to take the MSF course or whatever. So I have to imagine, yeah, you beat me by a year and a half.
Yeah, in Ohio, I could take the course at 15 and a half, and then I had to
Wow.
kind of wait it out till I turned 16 to actually, like, turn in the paperwork to get my
Hmm.
license. But because I have a December birthday, I took it in the fall, and then I just had to, like, wait until I reached my 16th birthday. And I was one
Yeah.
of those kids that, like, wanted to get their license the day of their birthday. So,
Nice. Yeah.
yeah.
Well, let's go back to kind of where we left off with you were just getting into college and you wanted to jump into journalism and PR. Did you know from the get go that you wanted to kind of combine your passion for motorcycles and journalism kind of together? Did you always want to do that, kind of make that career jump into the motorcycle industry?
I knew that I wanted to do something that I was passionate about. And my kind of two options or the two fields that I was interested in were nonprofit, coming from that 4 H and educational background, or motorcycling. And so I kind of made the jump into motorcycling. Once I graduated from college, I had connected with who would become my boss on LinkedIn way back
Mm,
in the day. And picked up after graduating college. I was only 20 at the time. I graduated college early and
nice.
moved to California and started my career. And that was, I always say, like, you don't know what you don't know, right? Like, just
Yep.
picking up and moving to California, that was a big, big change at only 20 years old. And I know you mentioned in the beginning that we're both Midwesterners here.
Hmm.
I'm definitely a Midwesterner. So my stint in California was pretty brief and I came back to Ohio, but learned a lot. And I loved just being able to kind of dive into the industry right out of college.
Yeah, I mean that's super fortunate, and I think being intentional with that kind of end goal in mind probably helped to figure out that path there. I imagine.
Yeah. So when I moved out to California, I worked for the Motorcycle Industry Council as a
Hmm.
communication specialist. Met a lot of really great people, a lot of great connections that I'm still in touch with today. And then I moved back to Ohio and started working for the American Motorcyclists Association. Did that for a number of years and then started my own business in 2021. So,
Nice.
yeah.
Yeah, there's the that entrepreneurial spirit, man. You can't get rid of it. So, yeah, it's funny you mentioned the West Coast Midwesterner thing because I moved out from Illinois back in 2016, and I moved out to Idaho, and I was in Boise, Idaho for until 2021, actually, and loved it. It was a great time. I love the Intermountain West. I love the West Coast and all that, but like home is definitely the Midwest, and I think only other Midwesterners can kind of understand it.
Yeah, there's just like a different I think it was more of the culture shock to me.
Oh, really?
Yeah, because I remember standing in line like in the grocery store in California and like trying to make small talk with
Hmm.
people in the grocery store line and they would look at me like I had 3 heads. Like people just didn't socialize out there in the
Yeah,
same
just not
way.
a thing.
So, yeah, it was
I have to
different.
imagine though the riding was probably fantastic. I mean, I've heard it's just a magical place to ride.
I didn't get to do a ton of writing, when I
Mm.
was out there. I think I was just kind of like I didn't know what to do. I was all alone. Like, I didn't know
Oh,
anybody
yeah.
when I
Okay.
moved out there, so I didn't,
Yeah.
quite have, like, the friends network until almost the time that I was leaving, really.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, if you've got friends out there still, it's easy. It's an easy to take a plane back. And when we're in the middle of the winter, that's supposed to be super cold and super snowy this year, you can jump on a plane and head back to nice weather.
Yes, I do have plans actually to go to AIM Expo in January, and
Nice.
because I have friends that live out there, I have a free place to stay, so that makes things a whole lot more affordable.
Yeah.
So I'm taking a kind of extended trip out there for probably a week and a half.
Oh, very cool. Yeah. You gotta sneak some riding in there then when you're out there. Um, so let's talk about high gear success because that's what you said. You started your own company and you did that 2021, right?
Yep.
So you've been doing it for a few years. Give me just kind of like a brief overview of what High Gear Success does, and where the name came from too.
Yeah, I mean, the name was kind of like a play on just like being motivated in life and also kind of that tie into motorcycling. So I
Yeah.
just thought it would be a really perfect fit. As far as what I wanted the business to be, I would say it was kind of vague in the beginning. I didn't know exactly how things were going to look. I knew I had these skills, I knew I had this experience, and motorsports communications and marketing consulting is kind of how I encapsulate it now. But really, I do a lot of work with motorsports event organizers to help them promote their events. And I had a lot of background in that because my dad also belonged to an off road motorcycle club. So that's where we
Mm,
spent a
okay.
lot of our time riding and camping and growing up. And they hosted a lot of events, mainly races back in the day, but now a lot of recreational rides like a national dual sport, adventure rides, family enduros, that sort of thing. So I kind of had that background and I worked with a lot of event organizers during my time at the AMA. So I was
Mm,
the director of member activity when I left. So I was working with any um, street or off road recreation organizer as well as volunteers and just really helping them promote their events and create an event that people wanted to come to. Like it's an experience when people come to events. And what I found is that a lot of these organizers had been hosting events for sometimes decades, and they just hadn't really transitioned with the times as far as technology or marketing. Some of them were doing mail in entries instead
oh my
of like
God.
online entry forms. Yes, it seems crazy. Um, a lot of them weren't doing pre-entry. They were just signing up at the event. A lot of them weren't keeping any records at all. They didn't have emails. They didn't have email marketing. They might have had a Facebook page. And so I was like, I think there's like, I see a need here that these
Yeah,
people need the support and there's not really anybody helping them do that. And so with my business, like it's been really, really good, but also a little bit challenging because people don't even know that that's an option for them. So I've kind of had to
sure.
go out and be like, hey, like this is a service that could benefit you. They're not really looking for somebody to necessarily be a motorsports marketing consultant.
Sure. Yeah, it's almost like a problem they don't know they have.
Yeah. Yeah. But it's been a lot of fun. So, primarily working with event organizers, I do some work with racers as well to help them get sponsorship. That's a kind of a challenging environment right now. So, the sponsorship money is a lot more challenging to get. So, I lean a lot more on the event organizer side of things. And then I do
Mhm.
some work with manufacturers and different companies within the industry as well.
Yeah. Well, like you said, I mean, between the couple jobs you had right after college, I mean, like you said, meeting a lot of people and meeting a lot of great people. I have to imagine you've got a lot of connections that you're able to help facilitate things, and if you've um, got a great work ethic, that always speaks for itself, and at least in my experience. So
Yeah, I think it was definitely helpful having been in the industry before and like people knew who I was and I had built those relationships. So it was kind of an easier transition into owning my own business. Like I said in the beginning, it was kind of vague on what exactly that would look like. But I had so many people literally approaching me saying, like, hey, I think you can help me. I don't know what this is going to look like, but like, I think we should talk. I remember like one of my first clients like coming and being like, "Hey, will you help us handle our event entry and marketing and getting sponsors?" And I was like, "Yeah, yeah, we can do that." So it just kind of like grown over time. And referrals are a really big source for me, and I love that because I feel like referrals are a great way to get to do business.
yeah, somebody vouches for you. You've done some good work for somebody that you can point to, and things just kind of go from there. In addition to high gear success, you've got your own podcast as well, Momentum, a motorsports podcast, which I love because it's short and sweet and to the point. So I appreciate the brevity there. Um, what made you want to start a podcast?
That was something that kind of fell into my lap as well. Not this podcast, but about a
Hmm.
year and a half ago, I was approached to be a co-host on a different podcast that a company owned. And I was like, well, that sounds kind of fun. Like I had first been a guest on that podcast, and then the
Okay, yeah.
host decided that they were going to move on to different ventures. And so I was like, well, that sounds kind of cool. And I kind of got my feet wet with that. Unfortunately, then the company that owned it, they owned kind of a conglomeration of podcasts, not just motorcycling stuff. We're making a
Hmm.
lot of cuts and changes in direction. And so that came to an end. And I was like, well, do I want to start my own? Like, it's going to be a big undertaking because with that other podcast, I had a producer and I was just the co host and um, I was getting paid. Now, I'm doing all the editing, the producing, the hosting, and shelling out all the money and not getting paid. So, um, it was something that I felt like I wanted to continue though, because I love connecting with different people in the industry. And I feel like there are so many stories that kind of are under the radar and need to be told. So, of
Yeah.
course, there's a lot of podcasts that talk to a lot of high profile people in the industry or a lot of racers, but there's so many more people in the industry that don't get a lot of recognition and coverage. And so I wanted to be able to share their stories. And I feel like you kind of do the same thing on this podcast as well.
Yeah, a little bit. I mean, there's just the motorcycle industry and the motorcycle world is a cool world. I mean, there's not a ton of industries I think where people just do it for the love of doing it. I have to imagine you run into a lot of racers like they're not necessarily like pro. It's like amateur class racing or whatever, but they're just as dedicated as a pro racer would be.
Yeah. It's definitely different between the amateur and the pro ranks as far as, like, the money that can be funneled into that.
Sure.
But,
Yeah.
yeah, there's a lot of really, really dedicated racers on the amateur side as well.
Yeah. Can you talk about some of the different guests? You don't have to like list them or name them, if, but just maybe some categories. Like you talked about some maybe under the radar racers or other people that are in the motorcycling world.
Yeah, and with my podcast too, I try to kind of broaden it so it's not just motorcycling. It's people
Okay.
that are also like side by side people, ATV. Maybe we'll get into other segments of motorsports that I'm not even familiar with currently. But yeah, I've had event organizers, I've had people that do PR for manufacturers, people that write for magazines, some youth racers, which I think is kind of a cool aspect. Yeah, it's just kind of been all over the place, and I think that variety is like good. I like a little variety in my life.
Yeah, I mean, there's so many different avenues that you can go down. I mean, there's off road racing, there's on road racing, there's street riding, there's like you said, side by sides and ATVs. I mean, especially in the off road world, we're pretty much all using the same trails, so
Yeah.
it makes sense to be a united front there. There's people who, they create motorcycles as works of art. It's endless the amount of people that are in this world. So I'm glad you've been able to find some cool folks to talk to as well. So there's no shortage.
Yeah, that's for sure. And you mentioned too, like the podcast name kind of being short and sweet and very straightforward. So I wanted to call it Momentum. And there are actually like a lot. That's like a big buzzword these days. I feel like that wasn't my
Okay.
intention, but when I started like looking into it, there are some like other podcasts that are like business related or not even motorcycling that
Sure.
had the word momentum in them. And for me, when I was thinking through names for the podcast, the reason that it stood out was not because it's like this catchy buzzword, but because when I was writing as a kid, my dad always used to ask me, "Who's your friend?" When I was riding dirt bikes, and I had to reply that it was Momentum because I was known for being a little bit of a slowpoke and being afraid to go down these big gnarly hills that we have in Ohio. Um, so yeah, that was kind of that phrase from my childhood that stuck in my brain, and most people don't get that from the podcast
Mhm.
necessarily when they hear that title, but that's kind of the meaning behind it.
Yeah, that's super cool, and it's personal to you, which makes it unique. So,
Yeah.
um, yeah, it's funny you talk about going down gnarly hills and stuff. Obviously, in Illinois, there's not very many, but I've told this story a couple times. Is that I have a lot of respect for off road people because I grew up riding street. Right, like I had a dirt bike. I rode a little bit. At some friends that rode, but I went out in Idaho with some friends who are like just ridiculously great dirt bike and off road riders or whatever. And we went up this giant hill, mountain basically to a ghost town. And like 5 minutes into the ride, I'm on a TT 250, I think, or something like that, an old 250. And I'm going down this hill and I just lock up the brakes because I'm cautious and scared about it. And end up just tumbling over end and dumping the bike, and I broke the clutch handle, the lever, but the cable was still good. So I had to spend the rest of that trip up this hill, taking 3 hours with a broken clutch handle or clutch lever that I could still manipulate or whatever. But I was so happy to be done with that ride. And I asked them afterwards, I said, okay, it took us like 3 hours, mainly because of me. How long would it take you guys to go up this? And they're like, oh, I don't know, like 45 minutes. I'm like, oh my God. I'm
Yeah.
like, well, thank you for your patience, but like, you guys are nuts. Like, I'd take the most congested highway in the world over this. Like, you guys have a skill set that I can't even begin to scratch. And I was like, at the beginning, I was like, I could ride. This is fine. I've been riding half my life. I got humbled that day, my friend.
I think it's a lot harder transition going from street to dirt versus dirt people can just pick up street riding right away. It's that
Sure.
traction element that you were talking about, like the dirt moving underneath of you and the bike moving underneath of you, that is very unfamiliar and scary for a lot of street riders to get used to. So
Yeah.
yeah, it's definitely challenging, more so for people to that have been street riders to transition to dirt, or even like the adventure segment is kind of an interesting segment because if people come from a street background, they're kind of nervous to ride on gravel or those, dirt roads type of thing. But a dirt bike person can just hop on a street bike and pretty much be good to go.
Yeah, yeah, no, you bring up a great point about that traction because I remember like somebody said, actually, it's my friend Cassie. She's been a guest on the show before, and she was like, I remember she told me you have to be comfortable with the bike moving underneath you, and I'm like, that is so counterintuitive to street riding because like, especially nowadays, like you're planted on the street all the time, and if you start to lose traction, that's when you start to like freak out, and it's totally fine to just rock back and forth. And what helped a lot was just she's like, you're never going to go in a straight line. You're always going to kind of be going back and forth and everything. And then after about halfway through that, I dumped it one more time. And she goes, well, I will say, you know how to get away from the bike and crash really well. I'm like, all right, cool. I'll take that. So,
Yeah.
but yeah, it's a whole nother skill set that, when I was like 15 and I didn't know any better, I was able to do it a little bit pretty well, but jumping on it back to it and as an adult was a bit of a challenge. So um, that's some cool insight though. Thank you for sharing that.
Well, and I feel like too, if people started riding dirt first and then transitioned to the street, they would have like a new respect or appreciation for how much gear they should be wearing. Because
Yeah, good
it
point.
hurts to crash on the dirt a little bit. Like it's not fun, but mostly you get back up. The dirt's, the ground's got a little bit of give, but
Right.
crashing at a much higher speed on pavement is going to be a much different result. And so I'm always very safety conscious and wear all my gear every time that I go riding, whether it's dirt, adventure, street. But I think some street people don't understand how much that pavement would actually really, really hurt.
Yeah. Yeah. No, that's probably a fair point, especially because yeah, nobody wants to think about the asphalt getting picked out of your skin when you're in the ER
Yeah.
after you've dumped it or whatever. But speaking of safety and all that, you are very safety conscious, very passionate about safety to the point where you do teach motorcycle safety classes in Ohio. How'd you get kind of involved onto the teaching side of things, and where does that passion for safety come from?
Yeah, I mean, I had taken the class, like I said, when I was 15 and a half. When I lived in California and worked for the Motorcycle Industry Council, kind of under that umbrella is the Motorcycle Safety Foundation, the ATV Safety
Okay.
Institute, all of those organizations as well. So I was very familiar with their curriculums. When I moved back to Ohio, I was like, well, it seems like a cool, fun job to be able to do on the weekends. And so I signed up to be an instructor, and I just finished my 11th year of being an instructor, which is crazy to say. And now I
Congrats.
even get to, thank you, train the fellow instructors in the state as like a trainer. So each year I get to train a new class of people that are
Nice.
becoming instructors. And that's really fun for me to get to do that. So yeah, I mean, 11 years of doing it. It's been interesting, through time to kind of see how the students have changed. COVID was kind of a rough time for
Hmm.
me teaching. People were a little bit edgier then, and there were there were moments where it's like, I don't know if I want to do this teaching thing anymore, but it's
Sure.
become fun again, and I think that's kind of like anything in life. You're gonna have ups and downs. Just kind of stick through it.
Yeah, yeah. There's highs and lows, but I guess it makes sense too because you mentioned that you thought you wanted to be a teacher, so you got to achieve that, just maybe
Hmm.
not in the way that you originally thought. So,
Yeah. Yep.
what goes into like teaching the teachers or instructing the instructors, as it were?
Yeah, it's a lot of hands-on learning experience for them. So first, like I'm teaching them kind of the basics along with some other trainers. Then they're peer teaching. They're teaching each other
Okay.
as people who are going to become instructors. Then they are basically like mock teaching classes, what we call live students or real students under our supervision. And they put a lot of hours, a lot of weekends into becoming certified. And then
Mhm.
we send them out in the field and continue to support them after that. But definitely a lot of hands on learning.
Yeah, yeah, and just having to step back like kind of a degree and teach somebody how to teach has to be a kind of a challenge because you're not only
Yes.
teaching the skills, but you're teaching like how to teach the skills.
And I think, not everybody wanted to be a teacher like I was.
Right.
Like they didn't have an educational background, maybe. And also, a lot of people come into it and they're like, well, I've been writing for 30 years. I'm just going to tell them what I know. And we are very clear up front that you aren't teaching what you know, and nobody cares about your experience. Like you're teaching the curriculum this way. You don't get to like add your own flair, your own like tricks or tips or things like that. Like you're
Right.
teaching the prescribed curriculum and it's all student focused. Like they don't care how much you've been writing or what you write or what you do. It's all about them and helping them achieve this goal. And many of the students have never even sat on a motorcycle before coming to class. So it's
Mm.
really to teach somebody who has no idea about the controls or anything about it. And then, of course, there are some people that have been riding for a long time that come take a class as a refresher as well. So you get a mix
Oh,
of
okay.
experience levels.
Yeah. Um, do you get a mix of young and old people, or maybe people in between? I mean, what's kind of the age range? Because one of the things that I keep hearing is that like young people don't want to ride motorcycles, young people don't want to do this or whatever. I kind of have turned it into like my little crusade is that like kids do and young people do want to ride something two wheeled, whether that's motorcycles or e-bikes or something like that. Like the desire to be on two wheels is there. And if we can just get more people on a motorcycle, I think the better.
Hmm.
So I'm just curious kind of what kind of folks you're seeing come through to take the class and become a new rider.
Yeah, kind of two parts to that question. So I'll try to keep them both in my mind. But I see a lot of students that are like younger, like the 20s range.
Hmm.
And then it kinda jumps to, like, the 40s to 60s range, and so we kinda have this gap
Interesting.
in your 30s, and my logic for it, at least from what I understand it to be, is, like, a lot of times in their 30s, people are getting married, they're starting families, so they take a little bit of a break during that
Hmm.
time while they're starting to have kids, and then, they're in their careers, and then they maybe come back to it later, so there's kind of that, like, age gap that I see.
Interesting.
But as far as like, I would say the stereotypes, right? Of like, oh, kids don't want to do this or different things like that. You also have to think back to our culture.
Hmm.
And I don't want to be the person that just says, this whole generation doesn't want to do X, Y, or Z. Like, have you invited them to do it? Are you welcoming? So, working
I
with
like
event
that.
organizers, where some of them are businesses and some of them are motorcycle clubs, and oh,
Mm,
people don't want to join organizations or be members. Have you invited them? Like, people love to be invited and they want to be welcomed. And sometimes this industry can be like very stuck in its ways about how somebody should be or what a motorcyclist is. And so if you're kind of being excluding or you're judging them for the type of bike that they ride or different things, then yeah, they're probably not going to want to come hang out with you. So I think like as an industry, like we get to be the change makers and the people that invite them to do the things that we enjoy so much.
yeah, no, and that's a really cool kind of thought. Like a next step is like they say that they don't want people, kids don't want to ride, but like, have you invited them? Like, have you made the effort? Because yeah, we're the ones kind of in that position to do so. So, I kind of love that little challenge.
And everybody's got different motivations for wanting to be a motorcyclist too. For some
Sure.
people,
Yeah.
it's that competitive nature where they want to race and do off road stuff or road race. For some, it's a form of transportation, literally to get them to work and back. And it's a cheap alternative in their mind, good gas mileage, things like that. Or there's people like me that I love the community aspect of it. I love the scenery part of it, being
Yeah.
able to go see, like, pretty places, like, that's what sucks me in to riding.
Yeah. Do you go kind of through in the classes and learn people's motivations for taking the MSF class?
We get some basic, like, background on them during class, like,
Hmm.
what are their concerns and expectations, like, what are their experience? So sometimes that comes out of, like, why they're wanting to ride. So we get a little bit of background, but really you get to see
Hmm.
it when you're out on the motorcycles, like, what their experience is and how you can help them.
Yeah. Um, I had a question and I forgot it. I was oh, what what can somebody maybe do, whether they're an experienced rider or they don't have their license yet, or maybe they've only ridden for a little bit? What's something or a couple of things that people can do to maybe prepare for the MSF class? Because at least like, so I remember back when I did it forever and a day ago, it was over a weekend. Usually they're over the weekends, and so they're kind of like, okay, Friday night, all day Saturday, all day Sunday, and that can be a little intimidating if you don't know what you're getting into. But you're signing up for like a 3 day like intense time commitment.
Yeah.
Um, what can somebody maybe do to prepare for the class?
So, if we're talking street bike riding and you're going to learn how to ride wherever you live, check with your state. So, it might be the Department of Public Safety or the BMV or the DMV, whatever you might call it.
Hmm.
They probably will have resources to classes that are going to be within distance for you. So, for Ohio, we have the MSF curriculum, which I'm certified to
Hmm.
teach. Ohio also has its own curriculum called MORE. So, that's the one I'm a trainer of. And different states might have different curriculums or training elements. But like you said, a lot of times they're either a 2 or a 3 day format. So it's about, let's see, like 16 hours of
Yeah.
time, like in the classroom or on a bike. Um, like physical fitness, I see that come into play a lot. So making sure people are like really hydrated, especially when we have 98-degree days here in Ohio or 20-degree days. Like you have to
Yeah.
be prepared for the elements. It's very exhausting too. So mentally, they're trying to figure out all this stuff, what to do with both hands, both feet, where are the controls. It can be exhausting, with the clutch hand. We're doing a lot of friction zone exercises.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, just making sure that like you're hydrated, well rested, that you're dressed appropriately for the weather. So not wearing a black hoodie when it's 98 degrees. Like we do have requirements about long sleeves and long pants, but like maybe let's make some different choices
Yeah.
to be a little more comfortable. So I think that's a good thing to keep in mind before you come to class. And then a lot of times there are books and resources that you can read even before coming to class. So our
Hmm.
students have the option of doing their homework before they come to class, and then they're a little bit more educated and able to engage in the conversations that we have.
Nice.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's a good call on reading. I mean, just even having any kind of literature about motorcycle riding would be better prepared, because I remember going into it and I was like, I mean, I know kind of how to ride. I know the basics of it, but I don't know what I'm getting into. But I have to say too that the class was a lot of fun. Like I have really fond memories of like how, and if nobody's taken an MSF class before, that it's very step by step. It's like you start out, I'm sure it's maybe probably evolved since, but you walk the motorcycle out from, into the parking lot, and then you turn it on, and then you figure out like where the controls are, and then it's a very step by step process. It's very gradual, and um, I have fond memories of it. So it lives rent free in my mind.
Yeah, it's a great process. And also, I tell people too, people learn at different paces. And so sometimes I'll have a student that is getting really frustrated with their lack of progress throughout the weekend.
Mhm.
And I have to remind them, like, you literally had never sat on a motorcycle until yesterday. And like, you're riding now. Like, you're maybe not meeting the expectations that you had for yourself, but you are making progress. And not everybody is well equipped to learn the basics in just 2 days. Sometimes it takes another class. Maybe they've gone through the whole class and they failed their evaluation and they're really upset, but like you
Mm.
still learned a ton and you can come back to class and apply what you learned and continue to grow your skills to be able to get your license.
Yeah. Do you have any stories or instances that come to mind where you were really able to kind of help somebody overcome that challenge, or make a breakthrough and become a rider?
Yeah, I think as much as it is like the physical skills and the coaching, you also have to be a little bit of like a mental cheerleader or like calming presence in their life.
Sure.
So,
Yeah.
um, not be a drill sergeant about stuff or why aren't you getting this? Like, I don't know. For me, I do remember like what it was like to learn how to ride and how, um, like I said, how taxing it can be on your brain. And sometimes I think people have been riding for 30 years and they don't remember what it was like to be new. So it's just
Sure.
second nature to them. And you kind of have to put yourself back in their shoes. But I don't know, there's just been a lot of instances where, you know, I'm able to kind of help walk them through the steps and then also keep them calm emotionally. And I feel like that's really helpful. And it's cool to see their progress throughout the weekend.
Yeah. Like I said, it's got to be fulfilling to go from not having ever even sat on a motorcycle to being able to ride and do some of the quick braking and the swerving and the more advanced techniques towards the end of the class. So,
Yeah. It
um,
We just kinda
oh, go
talked
ahead.
about, like, the street bike side of it too, but there's, the whole dirt bike world for, like, kids and adults even as well.
Oh yeah. Yeah.
And so I guess it's been, like, 2 years ago now, I got certified as a MSF dirt bike school coach. And so I'm able to
That's
teach people how
super
to
cool.
ride on the dirt, and I'm also USMCA, US Motorcycle Coaching Association certified. And so if there are people out there listening to this podcast that don't wanna get their street bike license or they're too young, there's always the option to learn how to ride on dirt, and this was kind of a need that isn't super well addressed in a lot of areas, so you gotta do a little bit more digging to find a
Hmm.
dirt bike school or coach, but I feel like it's very valuable to be able to learn from somebody else other than family and friends. So,
Agreed.
again, going back to that non-educator element, a lot of them haven't been trained on the steps to teach you how to ride, and I've seen and heard a lot of things go very wrong when they just say, "Just give it gas," and they whiskey throttle it into the wall. So,
Yeah, yeah.
there's value in having an instructor that's been trained to help you learn how to ride.
Yeah, I mean, I knew that people were there. There were dirt bike coaches and stuff, but I mean, honestly, I'm kind of embarrassed to admit I didn't know there was an MSF course for the dirt.
It's not very well publicized, and again, it's kind of few and far between because it has kind of a different facility requirement, and also it's not state
Sure.
funded, right? They're like private
Yeah.
businesses that people have to stand up on their own. So it's a little bit different versus the street bike side of thing gets a lot of state and grant funding or federal funding as well.
So there's maybe hope for me yet in the dirt and adventure world. It sounds
Absolutely.
like.
Yeah.
Um, well, going back to adventure riding, sounds like you kind of have been getting into that recently. Is that kind of the mix between dirt and street, like it looks like, or is it a completely different animal?
It can be as much dirt or as much street as you want to make it. So the adventure riding segment can vary a lot. The nice aspect is I'm able to just ride out of my garage and then go find some back roads here in Ohio that
Hmm.
might be dirt or gravel and kind of get off the heavily congested roads. Versus if I'm going dirt biking, I've got to load everything up in the truck. I've got to drive somewhere to a facility or a public land and then unload and come home and wash it. It's just like a little more work, which I
Yeah, there's
love to
more
go
to
dirt
do.
biking too, but a lot of times I'm doing that for like an event weekend, not just like a casual afternoon ride. So the adventure bikes are really nice just to be able to ride out of the garage. And for me, it feels more like home. So I've had, dirt bikes, I've had true street bikes. The
Hmm.
adventure bike is like the perfect fit for me because I do lean more on that dirt side. So it feels more like a dirt bike to me. I have a KTM 690 Enduro,
Nice,
and it really is probably one of my favorite bikes that I've ever owned. So yeah, I
nice.
love doing that.
Have you been able to take any trips or do any like touring on it, or?
I've done a couple trips to West Virginia. Gosh, I really have been very blessed to be able to ride motorcycles in a lot of different states
Mhm.
throughout the years, both dirt and adventure. A few years ago, I think we had the adventure bikes, and we have a toy hauler camper that we take, and then take the dogs too.
Yeah.
Um, so I think we were riding in Vermont and upstate New York. West Virginia, we love to go to because it's only about, a 3 or 4 hour drive to some really beautiful places in West Virginia. So I've been able to do
Mhm.
that. Oh gosh, dirt bike wise, it's like I've been in Utah and Colorado and the state of Washington and Tennessee and Kentucky. I mean,
Nice.
I have been very blessed to be able to ride in a lot of different places.
Yeah, you've hit a lot of like dirt bike hotspots and yeah, like I mean, think probably Ohio. People don't think about Ohio as like a good place to ride, but especially as you get farther east, you're getting into the Appalachian Mountains and into the foothills of the mountains, and you guys got a lot of hills and a lot of sweeping curves. And I went to the AMA Vintage Fest back in August, and I mean, like just to get from town into there, there's like a half mile or like a full mile downhill and then an uphill, like there's a lot of incline and a lot of altitude in Ohio that I think people shouldn't sleep on.
There are parts of Ohio that are definitely just flat farmland. And then there
Yeah.
are definitely some really cool rolling hills and back roads. So you have to find the right areas.
Yeah.
But Ohio as a motorcycling state is actually huge. I think they're number three in ridership in the country. I think it's
Really?
California, Texas, and then Ohio. So we actually have a really huge riding population, both street and off road, even though we're
Hmm.
able to only really ride during, spring to fall. Like
Yeah.
I'm
Yeah.
not a winter rider. So but yeah, there's a lot of writing to be found in Ohio.
Nice. Well, so you've obviously with growing up in the motorcycle world and then now working in the industry, having your own business. Um, how and you can go as far back as you want on this one, but how have you seen the motorcycle world kind of change over your life, for that matter?
hmm I think it's interesting coming from, a family that had a dealership and growing up in the industry to
Yeah.
working in the industry. I think you have a little bit different insight than maybe somebody that's not as deeply behind the scenes. And I've
Sure.
seen
Yeah.
things kind of change throughout the years because I get to know more or like I'm more involved behind the scenes. And sometimes that's good.
Mhm.
And sometimes I wish I didn't know so much, right?
Yeah.
um, I think the technology has obviously changed throughout the years. And even like teaching our students, a lot of the state bikes are older carbureted bikes, and they come to us and they've got
Oh,
their
yeah.
fuel injected bikes, and they're like, what is this? You know what I mean? They
Yeah.
don't even understand that technology. So the technology's changed. Um, I think the riders have changed in some ways. Like we've brought in new segments of riders, and yeah, at the core, I feel like the culture is the same, that community element, the different reasons that people ride, but there have been small changes along the way to kind of bring new people into it, or different advances in technology. So, yeah, in a lot of ways it's changed but also stayed the same.
Yeah, like the heart of it is and the people are maybe the same, but yeah, the technology seems to be um, growing and changing. It's funny you talk about starting and or having to train on these old carbureted bikes. That was my first bike was an old '79 Honda, so it's still in the garage, but yeah, carbureted, drum brakes in the back, and that's just what I thought. What I my motorcycling experience until I got um, a bike that a Yamaha that has fuel injection and ABS and traction control, and it was like having to like learn how to ride all over again. It was a lot. So I imagine going from the opposite direction to having all these creature comforts and all these assists to something that is there's no computer on it at all is has got to
Mhm.
be a jump for some people.
Well, and other changes in the industry too. So, pre and post pandemic, like the industry had a huge change in sales too, right?
Oh, sure. Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
the pandemic, well, not good for us in a lot of ways, also brought some like revitalization to motorcycling because people were looking for an activity to get outside and do kind of away from crowds and people and spend
Yeah.
more time in
Yeah.
nature. So there was a huge uptick in motorcycle sales. We were doing a lot more training as well for bringing new people into the sport. And then dealers were having this, record sales. It was just easy to sell a
Yeah.
bike. And then kind of after the pandemic, like things kind of turned off a little bit. So it's kind of been a little bit of a roller coaster from that aspect. And again, my goal would to be to keep all the people that started riding during that era, to like keep them engaged and wanting to continue to ride. Like I don't want to see all those new riders just like riding for a couple years and then immediately selling their bikes. Like what can we do as an industry to keep them engaged and wanting to continue riding?
Yeah, for sure. Do you have, I mean, in your experience working with like event organizers and different clubs and racers and stuff, do you have some strategies or some tactics that you've been able to utilize to get people kind of engaged that maybe we can steal from?
Yeah, I think one, letting people know that there are activities, there are events that they can do with their motorcycle, that it's not just something that they have to do on their own, that they just have to go out for a solo ride or they have to have a friend that rides. Like they can come to these events, they can meet other people that ride, they can come with friends. They can explore new areas without a lot of effort or work on their part. That's the beauty of an event, is like the planning is done for you. You just have to show up and then you're kind of along for the ride. You don't have to plot out your route.
Yeah.
Um, Maybe you don't even have to think about food or lodging. So that's a really nice aspect of the event side of things. And yeah, like engagement is doing things at events and then also that community element after the fact.
Okay, cool. Yeah, I think just the more people know or have ideas of either a how to get involved if they're not involved, or how people in the industry or in that are passionate about motorcycles can kind of spread the gospel, as it were. I think that's a good
Mhm.
thing. So
Yeah, I would say, to people who are riders, like invite people to go to events with you. And then if you're an event promoter, that's kind of where the marketing side of things come in, right? So being able to promote it on social media and website and in your local community, to get people aware of your events. Because, like I said, a lot of events are happening that people don't even know about. And I think that's kind of a missed opportunity.
yeah, yeah, for sure. If it's already happening around you, half the work, like you said, is done for you. You don't have to think about the route, or you can just go in and enjoy it. So
Hmm.
um, you've been around motorcycles and the industry in your whole life, and now it's how you make a living. What about motorcycles has kept you in it and kept you going for this long?
That's a question I haven't really thought about. I guess I just like enjoy it so much that I haven't really thought about it that deeply. Again, the relationships keep me going. I love the work that I'm doing. There's not a day that I get up and I'm like, oh, I got to sit down on my computer and do this work. Like I do love it.
Hmm.
Um, and it's cool to be able to make a living doing something that you enjoy.
Yeah, it's kind of a dream come true, I imagine.
Yeah.
Um, I have to ask before we sign off here, but did your parents dissuade you from getting into the motorcycle industry?
Yes, actually. um, Yeah, my dad would often tell me to go get a real job. He yeah, he was like, "Why do you wanna go work in the motorcycle industry?" And a question that I would get asked a lot, especially with my parents, selling and closing the dealership and retiring this year is, "Why didn't you
Hmm.
take over the dealership?" What you know?
Sure.
And it was a consideration kind of in my mind, but I love what I'm doing and making the impact that I'm making with event organizers and in the marketing space. And owning a dealership is just a completely different aspect. Retail is a very different world, a lot of overhead, um, a lot of risk, a lot of I don't know, just like dealing with people from the public. And I don't mean that in like a rude way, but I like being able to work from my house with my dogs and interact with people on a limited basis sometimes, except when I'm out at events. So I didn't want that side of life.
Yeah.
But yeah, I like what I'm doing in the industry. But yes, my dad definitely did dissuade me in some ways, but then I'm kind of bullheaded and I was like, yeah, I'm going to do it anyways. Also, if you were to ask my dad today what I do, he still probably couldn't explain it very well. Like,
Okay.
I think he's still kind of like unsure how I'm making a living doing what I'm doing. Like, he's super proud of me and he loves it.
Yeah, for sure.
But yeah, I don't think he really understands what I do on a day to day basis.
That's all right. Sometimes it's hard to put into like a sentence or two, like what you do, especially to somebody who's uninitiated. Is like, you know, it's like I get people to go to motorcycle events, right? Or like I do a motorcycle podcast. Like that's all you
Yeah,
really need to worry about.
yeah.
um, if somebody wanted to get involved in the motorcycle world or in the industry, maybe start a career and launch their career, kind of like you did. Um, what are some tips maybe you have or any advice besides don't do it? What advice would you have for somebody looking to do that?
Yeah, I would say get involved. So if you can, volunteer your time for an organization, help at an event. Um, yeah, just like get more intricately involved. And so people get to know you. Um, Shadow people in the industry if you can, if there's something that you're interested in. That's a great way to get a kind of inside scoop. It is a lot about relationships. I'll be very honest about that. So
Sure.
yeah, you could turn your resume into a company without ever having talked to somebody, but there's a lot better chance, and this goes far beyond the motorcycle industry, just career advice in general. If you get to know people and build that relationship, then it makes it a little bit easier to be able to land a job. And you might not get that job that you want the first time, but getting your foot in the door with maybe something that's kind of a lateral move, like then it could lead to something more.
Nice. I love it. I think that's some great advice. So, before we go, Heather, I just want to make sure everybody can find you, whether they're looking to get some more eyes eyes in their pages or butts in seats, or they want to listen to your podcast, or they want to learn more about maybe the MSF. Where can we find all the places that you're at?
Yeah, probably the easiest place that will have all those links is my website. So highgearsuccess.com. You can send me an email. You can find my social media, Facebook, Instagram. I'm at High Gear Heather on Instagram. And then Momentum and Motorsports Podcast is available on YouTube and all the streaming platforms. And it also has its own social media as well. But really, if you land on highgearsuccess.com, you'll kind of see the different segments and can find what you need there.
Nice. Well, I'd be lying if I said that I wouldn't want to give dirt a second chance after our conversation. So, if nothing else, thank you for that. But thank you very much for your time and for being on the show. And I'm sure we'll talk again soon. So,
Yeah, I really appreciate it. And thank you so much for this opportunity.